It's not a particularly well-kept secret that I really loved the Codex app when it dropped. And I want to be clear about this. I'm referring to the Codex app. I know it can be confusing because Codex was the first OpenAI model for doing code all the way back in like 2022, 2023, if I recall. Codex was also the CLI that they put out for working with agents back in 2025. Then Codex became a special version of the model that you could use with the CLI. Then it became the app, then it became the website, and became all these other things. And the Codex name got kind of diluted. But I still loved the app. I loved it so much that I built my own open source clone just in case it started to have regressions or other issues, and so I could use it with other harnesses and models. Today, OpenAI announced an overhaul of their app called ChatGPT Work. And with this, an all-new ChatGPT experience. I actually have it open right here, but you might notice something. It says ChatGPT, but the icon is Codex. That's because they stuffed all of Codex into ChatGPT. The Codex app is now ChatGPT. When I clicked the little update button in the bottom earlier because I was in Codex and I wanted the latest version, I ended up installing the new ChatGPT, and I'm not very happy about it. There are a couple things in this overhaul that are actually quite impressive, but there's also an absolute disaster of marketing to be discussed here too, and I'll be frank, I'm disappointed. I knew they were going to do this change for a while now because I had friends at OpenAI reach out to me concerned, asking for me to help them jump in front of this rebrand because so many people were so concerned about it, and it seems like they weren't successful. I have feelings about this, and they're not very good. I'm too frustrated to do a good transition joke, so let's just roll the sponsor and then I'll dive into all of my frustrations. You've probably heard me talk about today's sponsor before. It's Blacksmith. But listen, okay, I really need you guys to check this out because it has fundamentally changed how we think about CI for my entire company. The numbers speak for themselves. We're doing almost 1,000 runs a day on Blacksmith, and the vast majority of them are under 2 minutes long. Even the equivalent run on GitHub would have been significantly longer, sometimes as long as 10 minutes. It almost sounds too good to be true. It's 60% cheaper and 2 to 10 times faster, but it just is. You sign up your GitHub org, you swap the runs online in your GitHub runner, and you're good. But it's so much more than that. If it was just the faster runners, it would be the easiest recommendation in the world. But once you see how much better things like their observability are, where you can actually dig in and figure out what's going on across your services, it's night and day difference. I've had to use GitHub Actions for a few specific things like, publishing through the trusted OIDC flows through NPM. And I forgot how much worse all of the tooling was. And the moment I went back to Blacksmith because I had a bug in some runner, instantaneously was so much easier to figure things out. They also have an awesome monitoring flow where you can pick specific projects and workflows to monitor for specific triggers. For example, if there's a thing that you don't want your agents to ever do and you have a throw in your lint rules, this can set up a system to ping you when that happens and keep track of where and when those things are happening. Can you guys keep a secret? I don't know if I should talk about test boxes yet, but they're also really cool. It uses their existing infra for near instant spin-up of Docker images to run your agents to do real work. It's so cool. If this ad was longer than your CI, fix it today at soidev.link/blacksmith. Good to have you back. First, I'm going to do my best to try and explain why they made this change and the cool things that were added, and then I'm going to rip them a new one because I think this is really stupid. And then it opens Safari for me to sign back in with. Even better. And now I have to scan a fucking QR code in order to do the passkey auth because it won't use a fucking browser. Thanks, Anthropic. I should not have done that because they removed work. That was really dumb of me. We're going to have to do a little bit of magic in the edit quickly because everything fucking sucks now. I'm sorry. Anyways, to show what was on my screen approximately 45 seconds ago, there were 3 tabs in the Claude app. You had the standard Claude app, the home, which was for chat and whatnot. You had work, which was a thing we'll talk about in a second. And you had code, which was a bad interface for Claude Code, which is the Claude Code we all know and love, but in a GUI inside of the Claude app. That middle option that vanished was called work, and it was their attempt to take the things that make Claude Code magical for non-dev tasks and make those accessible for non-devs. Sorry, it was called co-work, not work. My bad. And co-work's been moved to now be part of this section here where you have chat and you have co-work, and separately you have code. There was an interim window where they had 3 options though. They had home, which was normal chat, they had co-work, and they had code. And the concept of cowork is really cool because it turns out having access to your computer, the ability to run commands, computer use, and all these other things is valuable outside of traditional dev work. I know this because the non-devs on my team have been using it heavily for all sorts of different stuff. With Cowork, you can use the files on your computer. You can use the browser that you have open. You can update your PowerPoint slides. You can do all sorts of work-like tasks that aren't writing software. The reason they built this is the power of Claude Code as a harness, not as a tool for writing code, but as a tool for using your computer to get real work done. And it seems like OpenAI wanted to do something similar, which is why they have rebranded Codex to be a feature in ChatGPT. Instead of the ChatGPT app being for chat and Codex being for, well, Codex, ChatGPT is now a UI for Codex as well as a UI for work, which is a separate thing that doesn't appear to do anything. I just clicked it and it shows the exact same stuff on the side here, but it should, hypothetically speaking, allow for non-devs to get some of the benefits that we see from ChatGPT. You might be a bit confused because I mentioned before that this is ChatGPT, so where's the chat? We have work, we have Codex. Well, if you go down a bit here, you see chat is an option because chat is no longer the thing you use the ChatGPT app for. Chat is now a pop-up in the ChatGPT app. Needless to say, I think that's really stupid. And I think the people who use the ChatGPT app for ChatGPT are going to be more pissed than the people who use the Codex app for code. And now I want to talk about the cool things that have been introduced. They have all of these fancy plugins for PDF management, spreadsheets, presentations, sites, which is a cool new thing that's pretty competitive with Lakebed, my cloud, so we'll talk about it in the future. And all these fancy plugins for Gmail, Slack, Notion, Google Drive, and lots of other things. Seems decent so far. You also have the ability to choose which folders or projects you're working in. And when you create a new project, you're no longer just saying this folder is what we're working with. You are picking an existing folder in your computer, and you can even select multiple to be used in a given project. It no longer maps in my head the way that I'm used to with, everything else. We make a new project and we click here to edit it. Why can't I pick files for it? Is this because I'm in work mode? It is. Great. So if I switch over here and I add a project, next, new. Oh, did they change this? That's annoying. The last time I tested this, you could have multiple folders in a project, but I don't think you can do that anymore. Weird. A lot of the UX has been changing kind of rapidly and not in ways that I love. But the point of all this is that it's easier for non-technical people to use Codex to give it access to things on your computer and do things. I want to talk more about the good things, so I'll do my best here. Obviously, the sites beta is included. I briefly mentioned that earlier. It is pretty cool. The plugins between ChatGPT and Codex have been unified, so there's just one layer for all of that. The computer use stuff had a massive improvement, including things like multi-tab and enterprise auth for browsers, as well as much faster computer use. The way that Andrew describes the difference between the Codex mode and the work mode is the interface. Codex is built to show you code, diffs, and PRs, while work keeps those details abstracted away. You pick one, or you can move freely between them. When you want to quickly explore an idea or get an instant search result, chat is now in the app too, with the instant and pro models, search widgets, and seamless handoffs into work or Codex tasks. The in-app browser is much better at helping ChatGPT work across the web with support for authenticated sites, multiple tabs, and file downloads. Your tabs will stick around too. It's also worth noting that the official ChatGPT browser, called Atlas, was sunset as part of all of this, with the expectation that you'll use the browser in the ChatGPT app instead, which to the 5 people who really, really liked the stuff going on with Atlas, I am sorry, probably not the best replacement. As I have mentioned many times about 5.6, it is way better at computer use, and when you combine it with the new computer use capabilities of the app, it's really, really cool. 5.6 has better taste at front end, yada yada. It can visualize data and things well, which is cool. Codex side got some updates, including editing files directly in app, seeing and reviewing PRs without having to leave the app, accessing pro mode in chats, and then handing off the context to Codex. This is actually pretty cool. I do a lot of talking about an idea with pro and then have to copy paste the context. Having a built-in handoff is actually kind of cool. There's the all-new Ultra mode for your most demanding work. Not really a feature with this Codex death. And the most important piece here, if you've grown deeply attached to the Codex app icon, you can keep it. I am one of the people that did not like this change and ended up going in, hopping in Appearance, scrolling all the way to the bottom where I saw this tiny little dock icon where you can choose between ChatGPT icon and the Codex icon. And this is the only proof of Codex's existence remaining, other than the little call out here. They do plan on doing more with this ChatGPT Codex merge, but they want to do it thoughtfully, not just smash two things together with a toggle and call it a day. Sure. There's also a list of nice small improvements, much better performance. I've noticed this. The Codex app has been overheating my computer a lot lately, and right now I don't feel almost any heat coming from it at all because the new ChatGPT Codex implementation seems to be more effective. My honest guess is that this is what they've been using internally for a while, and the updates to the Codex app are just keeping it safe and porting things over without actually testing it. So it's not super surprising to me that the Codex app has had problems lately because I don't think they're using it. And the reason that Codex was good is because so much of OpenAI was using it. Now they've moved over to this unified app. I would expect it to be pretty solid and to continue improving over time. They also cleaned up settings. They made the model picker and slider better. I do really like this, sliding between the options once you have the model picked. It's cute. It's not as bad as before. Faster, more reliable mobile connections. This is huge. The mobile stuff was so garbage, I basically gave up on it and just bullied Julius into building it for us for T3 code, which we'll talk about in a bit. New docs already has been better. I found that when I Google search for things like the CLI install for Codex, I can actually find it. Programmatic tool calling with code mode, useful. Nice to see that they finally added that. And better video rendering on SSH hosts. For when you're connecting to Codex over SSH on another machine, you can get video back through the SSH as a connection method now, which is cool, but yeah, I'm sticking with T3 code. Okay, I think I've done my best to cover the positives so far, which means it's time for me to crash the fuck out a bit. Agents have gotten really, really good at building websites. They still struggle with one important piece though, the DNS. It's crazy how obnoxious DNS can be, even just for deploying one small site. Once you're trying to do more complex things like set up subdomains for users that they can configure themselves, let users bring their own domains over, programmatic registration, and more, you start to run into a lot of problems, especially when you want your agents to drive these things. DNSimple has existed for a while with the specific goal of making DNS simpler, and I already loved using them for every service I built that required DNS that could be configured dynamically. If I wanted users to be able to register domains or sign up for things, DNSimple made it trivial to do. Their SDKs are still the best I've ever seen for managing domains, but they went a step further. The CLI is unbelievably cool. It's crazy just how far ahead they are from every other domain management service I've used. Most of them have dashboards that take 30 seconds to 2 minutes to load. DNSimple has a CLI that responds almost immediately with whatever request you have, or more importantly, whatever request your agents have. If you've had to think about DNS zones more than once in the past 6 months, I implore you check these guys out. They really know how to do it right. And if you use my link, you'll get $10 of credit when you sign up. Check them out now at soydev.link/DNSimple. As I mentioned at the start of the video, Codex had its problems in branding. Codex went from a special model to a CLI to new versions and treatments of a model to a desktop app. And the result is that to this day, when somebody says, I'm using Codex, I don't know what they're referring to. It could be the CLI. It could be GPT-5.3 Codex. Maybe they found a way to host that old Codex model back in the original Copilot days. I don't know. Maybe it's the app. Hard to know. For comparison here, when I say I'm using Claude Code, it's pretty clear what I mean. If I told you guys I was using Claude Code, what am I referring to? Am I referring to a model, an app, a CLI? If I tell you I'm using Claude Code, what do you think I'm using? See how almost every single reply is the CLI? It's because that's what people think of when they hear Claude Code. No one thinks about a special Claude Code model. Very few think about the app. It's clear. It seems like even Anthropic doesn't think about the desktop app too much. Claude Code refers to the CLI. Codex refers to a bunch of different things, and none of them are properly aligned. And the result is confusion and brand failures. But they started to fix this. The first step in the fix was killing the Codex models. Previously, they were training specific versions of the models to be better at code. They stopped doing that because they folded all those behaviors into the traditional main models. That's why we never got a normal 5.3. We only had 5.3 Codex, and then they folded those learnings into 5.4, and we'll probably never see a Codex model again as a result. That was a huge step forward. The next big thing they did was really lean into the app. It's been clear for a bit now that the Codex CLI is not their focus. It recently got some improvements, but a lot of those improvements were from me bullying the team into fixing things, threatening to file some slop PRs if they didn't. But there were a ton of just broken UI UX things in it. Like when you open it, if the wrong model selected and you typed /model too fast, it would fail because it was still trying to set up and connect to the MCP servers. It was just like obviously annoying and bad UX in ways that were trivial to fix. We're talking like 20 minutes of work max, maybe like 50 to 100 lines of code. And they just weren't bothering because the whole company had moved over to the app. And while that has problems, and while I wish the CLI, which is the only remaining open source surface, got a little better, got a little more focus, honestly, I understand why it hasn't been the focus, and I'm just thankful that they've kept the app server in as good of a state as they have. If you're not familiar with what I mean there, the Codex CLI hosts a server that lets you connect to it through apps, like, the official ChatGPT app in Codex mode, but also things like T3 Code. So those things helped a bunch. The biggest thing that helped with Codex's brand, though, was that the app got good. It was decent at launch, but it continued to improve. It kept on adding awesome things that were unique to Codex. Things like the computer use capabilities that are just not at the same level in any other tool right now. And all of that combined with how generous the subscriptions were and how good the models had gotten at coding resulted in a huge resurgence of the Codex brand, despite their attempts to shove pets in our faces. And all of this led to Codex growing massively. OpenAI couldn't stop bragging about it. They were seeing 5x or more growth every month consistently. And it had gotten massive. They were buying Super Bowl commercials just for Codex. But here's where things start to spiral. As soon as Codex became default behavior for the model, when they folded the Codex models in, the need to fold more in became apparent. The reason that they folded Codex's training into the main models is because the things Codex did were useful outside of code. Being able to do really long-running agentic work is valuable. It lets you complete tasks that otherwise couldn't be completed using LLMs. I would argue that when 5.4 dropped and confirmed they were no longer doing Codex models, the inevitable end of Codex was kind of painted on the wall. And as Codex kept getting better and better, and ChatGPT kind of, I don't want to say faltered or anything, but it wasn't improving at the same rate. It was hard to not stare at these two things, where one is ChatGPT, the thing that makes your business most of its money, that is massive and super popular and well used by almost 1 billion people. And you have this much smaller thing, Codex, that is way more capable, that's improving way faster, that everyone loves. It's hard to not stare at these two things and be like, oh, yeah, Codex, that should be ChatGPT, because then they'll like it even more, then they'll keep using, and our growth will be focused in on where we are going. And obviously, all of the benefits of Codex, like its ability to do things on your computer, were very valuable as a harness helper, whatever you want to call it. The harsh reality is that Codex was too good for Codex. Since the team did so well making Codex awesome, to the point where I know a lot of people who made the move entirely away from Claude Code and Anthropic models, myself included for a while up until Fable, those people made the shift for a reason, and it was because Codex had improved such an absurd amount. Obviously, they wanted to expose all of that capability to ChatGPT, but my honest guess is also a bit of a team shuffling thing here, where they had the goal of trying to get these incredible engineers building Codex, all of the awesome people they had hired from everything from marketing to DevRel to general comms and management of folks like myself, to obviously the engineers building the app, as well as the insane people who are doing all the Mac computer use hacks. Ex-Apple employees doing a lot of that, by the way. It's super crazy. I get why they wanted to fold that into the cash cow of ChatGPT. But that, on the topic of the company structure, I do think they've had some issues with the breakdown between research, apps, ChatGPT, and dev stuff like Codex. And I think that this announcement from Fidji is a pretty damning issue. To the credit of OpenAI, it seems like she was having a lot of severe health issues that are the main reason she has been taking leaves and is now moving to an advisory role. But this is the individual whose role was previously the CEO of applications at OpenAI. She was brought in an attempt to focus in on the product side as its own business and really make great apps like the ChatGPT mobile app, the ChatGPT site, and then as well Codex. It seems like they've struggled a lot with doing this correctly. And she has personally struggled quite a bit too, which is why she has decided to leave. It does not appear that she's leaving on bad terms. Sam Altman's even said that he is really sad about it, but is very grateful for all that she has done at OpenAI, and even grateful for her friendship and who she is as a person, wishing her a speedy recovery. Again, health seems to be the driving issue, but when the driver has health issues, you now have a driver issue. And since she is the one in charge of driving OpenAI's application development, this isn't great. That's also the mistake, because part of why Codex was doing well wasn't just that it was so good. A big part of why Codex is doing well is because it wasn't ChatGPT. Codex users didn't want ChatGPT. If they did, they would be using ChatGPT. They wanted Codex. A large part of that is the functionality that Codex has, but a lot of it is that it's its own surface built by and for devs focused entirely on our use case and our needs as developers. I made a post earlier today about my feelings here. Codex rebranded to ChatGPT, Claude is spamming me with Excel plugins, XAI is bragging about how good Grok is at PowerPoint. I knew the AI labs focused 100% of their effort on software devs thing, but it's sad having it all end at once. This is kind of how it feels for me. The dev stuff that all the labs have been focusing on is still very valuable, but it's time for them to try and branch out beyond developers, trying to expose the awesome functionality of Codex and of Claude Code to people who aren't just writing code. But I think they made a huge miscalculation by doing this. Not only were people using Codex because it wasn't ChatGPT, they're also using it because it wasn't Claude Code. And as such, they started building an allegiance to it. Everything from people showing up at events wearing Codex merch to people getting really hyped to talk about it. I even know people who have been trying to make Codex-specific meetups happen. Codex is a brand that went way beyond OpenAI and ChatGPT. It was a brand that felt built for developers, and it was resonating with them a lot. It resonated with me so much that I ended up making my own clone of the Codex app. I try to not shill my stuff constantly, but you know what? It's fully open source and free and doesn't make us any money. I'm going to talk about T3 Code a little bit. The genesis moment that led to me building T3 Code was actually during the early testing of the Codex desktop app. Because I liked the Codex app so much that the random performance issues that appeared a few days into testing frustrated me deeply, so deeply that I wanted to make sure I could fix it myself if it broke. And when they told me they did not intend to make the desktop app open source, despite the CLI being open source, but that the CLI was how the Codex desktop app worked through all of the app server stuff, I realized it might be time for us to make our own open source alternative so that if we do have these types of problems, we'll be good. We can fall back to an open source project that can be modified by us, can be pinned to an old version, can be fixed by us. Whatever you need to do to make sure T3 Code behaves how you want it to behave, you can do now. To be frank, as much as I loved the Codex app, I didn't trust OpenAI to not screw it up in some way. Whether it's performance issues, whether the models just stop getting better and I want to use it with different models, whether they make some UI change that I hate, or I guess kill it entirely. I wanted to make sure I had a solution that I could trust and that you guys could trust too, because it's open source, so you can do whatever the hell you need to it. And that's why we have this steal our code legally button at the bottom, because I want you guys to be able to use T3 Code for whatever the hell you want. And a lot of people have. There are forks of thousands of users, and as many as a fourth of our users are running a fork or a patched version of some form. And I love that. I want to support that. I want people to be able to change their editor experience however they want to. And I'm more thankful than ever that we did this, because I don't want to use this version of Codex. I just don't. I don't like having all of these things I don't use all the way at the top here, especially on my smaller screen. I don't like that the combination of that and pin chats means that projects is so far down the UI now. I don't want sites as a special button built into my UI here. I don't want chat as a pop-up window that happens when I'm just trying to write some goddamn code. I don't like this direction at all. And what I like even less is the erosion of the Codex brand, because it was starting to do really well. Codex had grown to the point where it was an actual competitor to Claude Code. And now it's a lot harder to talk about that. And this is why I think they really fumbled here. Having Codex as like a little call out here is nice and all, but it's not the same. It doesn't get people excited to talk about how they're using Codex instead of Claude Code. Bricero put this really well in chat. Instead of, hey man, you gotta try Codex, it's now, hey man, you gotta try the Codex mode in the new ChatGPT desktop app. Yep. Even people like Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, sent emails to Sam Altman about how excited they were to use Codex to accelerate and do work never possible before. Codex. That's over. To put it simply, this is one of those changes that just hurts motivation. Both the motivation of the people using Codex to share it with others, but also the motivation of the team building it. I know a lot of people that joined OpenAI to work on Codex the coding experience. And now Codex is just a toggle inside of the ChatGPT app. It's just a bad decision. Company organization-wise, this might make sense. And if you're the type of person who works at OpenAI and is thinking about these things constantly, the layers here don't matter as much. But this is a really common mistake for people who work on one thing full-time. They lose their ability to take a step back and see how the world perceives it. And in this case, the world's perceiving this as very confusing. A bunch of people opened up their ChatGPT app today to have it turned into a code editor with a chat button and a pop-up shoved into it. A lot of developers installed an update for Codex just to have the app replaced with ChatGPT. And now when they tab around, it says and shows the ChatGPT icon instead. And maybe if they go find this hidden menu, they can make it at least look like the Codex icon, even though it says ChatGPT under it. It's just dumb. This is just not the right path. It's a fundamental failure to understand how people think about these things and talk about these things. But at least they haven't taken the app server yet, which means other tools can still use Codex without leaving behind developers. Because my fear now is that the things we need as devs are going to be deprioritized as ChatGPT has new features they want to shove into this top left section. I've never been so thankful to have done a sloppy open source project as I have with T3 Code. I still can't believe how far it's come, and I'm so thankful for people like Julius making it what it is today. It was a Hail Mary bet that was kind of hedging on the possibility of Codex getting worse. I will be real, I was not hedging on the possibility of Codex becoming a toggle, but here we are. I don't think I have anything else to say on this one. I am just sad to have lost one of the brands and apps that I genuinely really liked. I let OpenAI know ahead of time what I thought about this change. They didn't seem like they wanted to hold it back, and I guess I wish they did. I have nothing else to say about this. It's a sad way to kill a brand that was growing and was well loved within the developer community. And I wouldn't be surprised if they started to see sentiment shift as a result of this seemingly simple change. I got nothing else to say on this one. I'm going to go play around with the new model because at least that's really good. Until next time, peace nerds.